Something is shifting. You may not have the words for it yet, but somewhere in the quiet hours, maybe at 3 a.m. when sleep refuses to come, maybe in the middle of an ordinary conversation that suddenly feels unbearably hollow, you have felt it. A stirring, a tension in the air like the atmosphere before a storm that hasn't broken yet, a sense that something enormous is reorganizing itself just beneath the surface of your visible life. You are not imagining it. The sky above you is moving in ways that human beings have tracked, studied, and revered for thousands of years. And right now it is arranging itself into one of the most electrically charged configurations in the astrological calendar, a solar eclipse in the visionary sign of Aquarius. Solar eclipses are not merely astronomical events. They are, in the language of every ancient skywatching civilization that ever existed, profound cosmic thresholds. Moments when the ordinary rules of time and energy are temporarily suspended. Moments when what has been hidden is suddenly, sometimes mercilessly, revealed. Moments when the universe performs something that can only be described as a reset. And this one, this Aquarius eclipse, arrives carrying a very specific frequency, one that speaks directly to your relationships, your karmic contracts, and the people whose chapters in your story may be quietly but unmistakably reaching their final page. If you feel that something in your life is on the edge of a profound change, if certain connections feel like they are loosening, like hands slowly releasing a rope, drop the words, "I am ready to receive" in the comments right now. What you're feeling is not confusion. It is clarity beginning to arrive. Stay with me through this video. What follows is not prediction. It is illumination. And by the end, you will understand not only what this eclipse means, but why it is happening for you, not to you. If this resonates, a quiet like on this video sends it to someone else who needs to hear it today. Long before electric light washed out the night sky, human beings lived under the stars with an intimacy we have largely forgotten. The ancient Babylonians, some among the earliest systematic astronomers on record, maintained meticulous celestial logs called astronomical diaries for over 6 centuries. They did not separate the science of the sky from the meaning of the sky. To them, the cosmos was a living, communicating intelligence, and eclipses were among its most emphatic sentences. When the sun disappeared in daylight, it was not cause for panic. It was cause for profound attention. The ancient Egyptians encoded their understanding of celestial cycles into the very architecture of their sacred structures. The alignment of temples at Karnak, Abu Simbel, and across the Nile Valley demonstrates an astronomical precision that required generations of careful sky observation. For the Egyptians, the sun, Ra, the great creative force, going dark even momentarily was a mythic event, a death and resurrection, a dissolution of the old order and the seeding of the new. Move across the Atlantic to Mesoamerica, and you find the Maya, arguably the most sophisticated calendar mathematicians of the ancient world, who developed eclipse tables of extraordinary accuracy without modern instruments. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya manuscripts, contains eclipse prediction tables that modern astronomers have confirmed are remarkably precise. The Maya understood eclipses as portals, windows when the membrane between ordinary reality and deeper cosmic reality became thin enough to reach through. In the Vedic tradition of ancient India, eclipses were governed by the shadow planets Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes of the moon, the mathematical points where the moon's orbit crosses the sun's apparent path. These were not considered malevolent forces, but rather karmic forces, powerful accelerants of soul evolution. Rahu represented insatiable forward movement, new experience, the hunger for what has not yet been lived. Ketu represented release, completion, the wisdom earned through everything already surrendered. Together they governed the axis of destiny, and solar eclipses occurring when the sun, moon, and these karmic nodes align were considered the most potent moments for karmic resolution and redirection in the entire astrological year. This is ancient wisdom speaking across millennia with a unified voice. Eclipses are not random. They are assignments. Now here is what makes this particular eclipse significant in the framework of modern Western astrology. It falls in Aquarius, the sign of the revolutionary, the visionary, the radical humanitarian. Aquarius is governed by Uranus, the great awakener, the planet that rules disruption in service of liberation, where Saturn, Aquarius's traditional ruler, builds slow, enduring structures. Uranus tears down what no longer serves so that something freer can rise. An Aquarius eclipse, then, is not a gentle invitation to change. It is a thunderclap of clarity. It asks, what in your life, what beliefs, what patterns, what relationships belongs to the old version of you? And are you finally ready to stop maintaining what no longer fits? This is the question this eclipse places gently but uncompromisingly at the center of your heart. Let's talk about what a solar eclipse actually does, not astronomically, but energetically and psychologically, and why the ancients were right to treat these moments with such profound respect. A solar eclipse occurs at a new moon, when the moon passes directly between Earth and the sun, temporarily blocking the sun's light. Astrologically, the new moon is already considered a threshold of beginnings, a time when the slate feels cleaner and intentions carry particular weight. The solar eclipse amplifies this quality to a degree that regular new moons simply cannot match. Here is a useful metaphor. Think of your life as a river. Most of the time it flows according to established channels, the banks carved by your habits, your relationships, your beliefs about who you are and what is possible. The current finds its path and follows it day after day with the comfortable predictability of the familiar. A solar eclipse is like a sudden, dramatic shift in the landscape upstream. Something vast moves. The source changes direction, and the river, your life, begins to reorganize accordingly. Old channels may dry up. New ones begin to cut through unexpected terrain. What appears at first to be disruption is actually redirection. And the reorganization, though sometimes disorienting, is always in service of moving you toward a truer course. Now, what about the deeply human, deeply felt experience of people leaving? This is the part of eclipse season that almost everyone who tracks these energies notices, and almost no one fully prepares for. In the weeks surrounding a major solar eclipse, there is a consistent and recognizable phenomenon. Certain relationships reach a point of natural completion. Connections that have been maintained by habit, by obligation, by the comfortable weight of shared history, but that no longer carry an active, living current of genuine exchange, begin to dissolve. Not always dramatically, not always with conflict or confrontation. Sometimes it is simply a growing silence, a conversation that becomes progressively harder to start, a presence in your life that begins to feel more like a memory even while the person is still physically there. The Vedic Astrologers would recognize this immediately as Ketu's influence, the South Node energy that governs release and karmic completion. When a relationship has fulfilled its sole purpose, when what it came to teach you has been taught, when what it came to heal has been healed as much as it can be, the energy that held it in place begins to naturally withdraw. This is not failure. This is graduation. And the Aquarius frequency of this eclipse adds a specific quality to these departures. Aquarius rules networks, communities, and the distinction between genuine soul-aligned connection and connection maintained out of social obligation or fear of aloneness. Under this eclipse, your soul's discernment becomes extraordinarily precise. The difference between someone who expands your frequency and someone who quietly drains it becomes almost impossible to ignore. You may find that you are not merely losing connections, you are being curated. Your inner circle is being refined toward greater authenticity, greater resonance, greater truth. 3 is a number that carries particular symbolic weight across traditions: the triangle, the Trinity, the triad of mind, body, and spirit. When we speak of 3 souls potentially completing their chapters in your story during this eclipse window, we are not speaking of a rigid prediction. We are speaking of a pattern that many who walk consciously through major astrological thresholds have noticed and recognized. It may be 3 people, it may be 3 types of connection: the companion who enabled your old wounds, the authority figure whose approval you no longer need, the friend whose vision of you was always smaller than the truth of who you are. Whatever form it takes, pay attention. The ones who drift are not losses, they are permissions. Perhaps you are sitting with a question right now, a very honest, very human question. What if the person leaving is someone I still love? This is the place where eclipse wisdom needs to be held with the greatest care, because the energetics of the season do not operate according to our preferences or our timelines. Love and karmic completion are not opposites. In fact, some of the deepest loves carry the most complete karmic contracts. And when a contract completes, the love does not necessarily disappear. It transforms. There is a teaching found in various forms across Sufi mysticism, Buddhist philosophy, and indigenous wisdom traditions that speaks to this directly. Not every soul who enters your life is meant to walk the entire road with you. Some arrive to light a particular stretch of the path. Others come to carry you through a specific terrain you could not have crossed alone. And when the terrain changes, when you have crossed what you needed to cross, the most loving thing the universe can do is redirect both of you toward where you each need to go next. Khalil Gibran, the Lebanese poet and mystic whose work draws deeply from both Eastern and Western spiritual streams, wrote that people can give each other their love, but not their thoughts, for they have their own thoughts, that they can stand together but not too close, for the pillars of the temple stand apart. This understanding is that love at its truest honors the sovereign trajectory of each soul is exactly what eclipse season illuminates. Now there is something else worth addressing because the energy of Aquarius can be misread. Aquarius, in its highest expression, is visionary, community-oriented, humanitarian, but in its shadow it can trend toward detachment, toward cutting ties prematurely under the banner of evolution or raising your vibration. This is worth examining honestly. Not every friction in a relationship is a sign that the relationship has completed. Not every uncomfortable conversation is a karmic goodbye. Sometimes the most evolutionarily courageous thing you can do is stay and do the harder work of transformation within the connection rather than replacing it. The discernment this eclipse asks of you is genuine discernment, not reactivity dressed in spiritual language, not the ego's desire for a clean escape, repackaged as soul growth. Sit with the difference. Your body knows it. A relationship that is genuinely completing will feel like a quiet exhale. Sad, perhaps, but clean. A relationship that is inviting you to grow within it will feel like resistance with roots, difficult but alive. Trust that distinction. The Aquarius eclipse also activates something that extends far beyond your personal relationships. Aquarius rules collective consciousness, societal structures, and the future that humanity is collectively building or dismantling. A solar eclipse here sends ripples not just through individual lives, but through communities, institutions, movements. You may notice in the weeks surrounding this eclipse that collective conversations shift, that what felt privately true to you suddenly becomes publicly visible, that ideas you have been carrying, perhaps quietly, perhaps even secretly, suddenly find a company. This is the Aquarian invitation to recognize that your personal awakening is not separate from the collective one, that when you do the courageous inner work, when you release what no longer serves, when you align more honestly with your truth, you are not merely changing your own life. You are contributing a single essential thread to a tapestry that is larger than any individual story. Your healing is collective medicine. Your awakening casts light that others can follow, even when you cannot see them following it. So how do you move with this eclipse energy rather than being moved by it without understanding? Here is not a checklist. This is an invitation into a practice, experiential, alive, yours. The first practice, the honest inventory. In the days surrounding a solar eclipse, the veil between what is true and what is merely habitual becomes extraordinarily thin. Use this thinness deliberately. Find a quiet hour. Early morning works beautifully for this in that liminal space between sleep and full wakefulness, when the analytical mind has not yet fully engaged its defenses. Sit with a journal and ask yourself slowly and without rushing toward answers 3 questions. Which connections in my life do I return to out of genuine love and resonance? And which do I maintain out of fear, habit, or obligation? Where in my relationships am I performing a version of myself that no longer reflects who I am becoming? What would I naturally move toward if I stopped managing other people's comfort at the expense of my own truth? Do not try to answer these questions with your mind. Write what arrives before the mind has time to edit it. The first words are usually the truest ones. The second practice, the eclipse new moon intention. Because this eclipse falls at a new moon, it carries exceptional potency for intentional planting. New moons are traditionally the time for seeding, for naming with clarity and feeling what you are calling forward into your life. But here is the nuance that eclipse season adds. This is not only a time for declaring what you want, it is equally a time for declaring what you are releasing. Write 2 lists. The first, what you are consciously welcoming, the kinds of connection, the quality of presence, the version of yourself you are stepping toward. The second, what you are consciously releasing, the patterns, the roles, the relationships that belong to who you were rather than who you are becoming. When you have written both, read them aloud. The voice carries intention in ways that silent reading does not. You are not casting a spell. You are making a declaration to the part of you that is always listening, the part that responds to clarity the way a compass responds to north. The third practice, the relationship review. Over the next 30 days, the window within which eclipse energies are typically most active, bring your attention consciously to the quality of your interactions. After significant conversations or time spent with people in your life, check in with your body. Not your thoughts about the interaction, your body. Do you feel expanded or contracted, energized or quietly depleted? More yourself or slightly less? This is not an invitation to audit everyone in your life for worthiness or to approach relationships with suspicion. It is simply an invitation to gather honest data. Over time, patterns emerge, and those patterns, gently acknowledged, become the map for the reorganization this eclipse is already quietly initiating. One final note on the challenges this season can surface. If relationships are ending, if silence is growing where there was once conversation, if you find yourself in the grief of a goodbye, give yourself the dignity of feeling it fully. Spiritual maturity is not the absence of grief. It is the willingness to grieve what mattered without pretending it didn't, while simultaneously trusting the larger movement of your life toward what is next. The eclipse does not ask you to be unbothered. It asks you to be awake. Let's return to where we began. That feeling you carried into this video, that stirring, that sense of something reorganizing just beneath the surface of your visible life. You were not imagining it, you were perceiving it. And there is a profound difference between those two things. The Aquarius solar eclipse is not happening to you. It is happening for you, for the most honest, most courageous, most luminous version of you that is always, without rest, trying to emerge. The ancient sky watchers knew this. The Vedic astrologers charting karma across lifetimes knew this. The Sufi poets, weeping beautifully about reunion and release, knew this. And somewhere beneath every layer of conditioning, every comfortable story you have told yourself about who you are and what you need, you know this too. Some connections will complete. Some silences will deepen into genuine farewells, and in the space those departures create, do not rush to fill it. Sit in the clearing for a moment. Notice what it feels like to have more room for yourself. Notice what begins to breathe more freely when it is no longer crowded out. What finds you in that space will be different from what you have known. It will be aligned in ways that feel less like comfort and more like truth, less like familiarity and more like recognition. Your soul is not diminished by this season. It is being refined by it. And refinement, in every tradition that has ever worked with fire and transformation, is how raw material becomes something capable of carrying light. If this journey resonated, if something in these words landed in a place that needed landing, consider joining this community of seekers by subscribing to Divine Frequency, not because you need another subscription, but because the path of conscious awakening is walked more beautifully in company. Until the next threshold, keep listening. The universe is still speaking. It never stopped. And neither, beloved soul, have you.